Hey guys, welcome to the second video in the Space Invaders series we're doing for my video game programming class. In this particular video we're going to get this far. So in the last video we had our little blue spaceship shooting bullets, and now we have some squares that will eventually turn into the actual Space Invaders themselves. At the moment they're just squares, but they are moving properly, or at least good enough for my book. So we're going to spend this video getting them set up. You are going to need some pretty advanced concepts for this. If you're a third or fourth semester, you should have seen these in at least one other game, so you should be fine. Just so you know, we're going to be using lists, which are just like vectors. If you understand vectors, you're fine with lists, okay? In fact, if I wanted to right now, I could do a Control F and change out all my lists for the word vector, and it would work the same pretty much. So don't freak out. But if you do need to know vectors, though, you also need to be pretty confident with classes and objects. We're not doing inheritance yet, but classes and objects. We already did set up a class with our bullet class, but we're going to now have a class for our actual invaders. And then the final thing is that you should be okay with pointers. Pointers are a cool ability that C++ language has, and it's not really available in other languages besides C++ that I know of. And like I said, if you're an advanced student, you should be okay with that. If you haven't talked about pointers yet, then make sure that I go over that with you. Or just make sure you ask a lot of questions about this after the video, because I'm not going to explain really in depth what they are. I'm assuming you have a working knowledge of what they are. Okay, so that being said, let's go ahead and get rolling here. So, from the last video, we had a class bullet, and we created a bullet and initialized it and then used it later on in the game. We are going to do something similar with our invaders. So you can see class invader. It's pretty similar to class bullet. I've got a couple extra variables in here to help with the movement algorithm that'll be laid out in this move function. In fact, here it is right here. We have a couple different constructors here. Constructors are it's a fancy word for like built-in initialization function, okay? So if you're not super familiar with constructors, it's just a type of an initialization function that compilers are expecting to see when you're working with objects in a certain way. So yeah, so this is just like another initialization function, as you can see from what it's doing. The movement algorithm is a little complicated, but it's nothing in terms of advanced knowledge. Like, this is something my first semester kids, it'd be hard for them to wrap their head around, but in terms of coding knowledge, you don't really need anything special with this movement algorithm. Basically what's happening is we have this variable called step count, and every 4 steps or so, it's going to change direction. So if it's going in the right direction, we're going to go ahead and move everything to the right direction. And then if it's like its 4th step, it's going to set the new direction to down, hold on to the fact it was last moving right, because down is going to want to know what to go next after it's done, and reset that step count. Same thing if we're going left, we actually move left. If it's like our 4th step, we're going to go down and then hold on to the fact that our last direction was left, because again, down here was down. It's going to actually check and see, where did I go last? Let's go the opposite direction. And you see that right here. If our last direction was left, after we go down, we're going to go right then. But if our last direction was right, then after we go down, we're going to go left. So not really crazy hard logic there, just, a lot of typing really. I actually just copy pasted my bullet class over here, so this stuff is gonna go away. We're not gonna use this, so don't copy any of this right now, because this is just basically this is just left over from the bullet function that I copy pasted because I was being lazy. This you do need. It's the same as the bullet, but I did change it so it's a 30 by 30 box instead of the tall skinny bullet shape. Okay? Alright, so that shouldn't be anything crazy new or weird, but main is going to get a little funky here if you haven't worked with pointers and vectors a lot. Okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a list, just like creating a vector, of pointers to my invaders. Okay? So I'm not creating a list of invaders, I'm creating a list of pointers to invaders. So remember, pointers are memory addresses. So what this list is going to contain is just a series of memory addresses. The name of this list is bad guys, because that's what it's holding. It's all my bad guys. Okay? This is just an iterator. Remember, an iterator is kind of like a sticky note that is stuck onto whatever slot of the list or vector or array we're looking at any given time. Okay, so it shouldn't be too new there, but this might be a little bit hard to wrap your head around. Then what we're going to do is we're going to push 5 aliens into the list. And we're going to do kind of an interesting thing here. So we are going to use the new operator. And what this is dynamic memory. So we're kind of like creating an object on the fly. We are, and we're calling each one saucer. We're going to do this 5 times. We're going to create 5 new saucers and stick it into this, bad guy list. Okay? Each new invader is going to be moved slightly over to the left, but they're all going to be the same height because I'm just making one row right now. Okay? We'll hopefully have a lecture or 2 on this semester, because this is probably the, conceptually, in my opinion, probably the toughest 2 lines of the whole game. But right now, if you just understand it well enough to be able to implement it, that's good enough for now. Okay? So just be aware that we're making pointers of these invaders, sticking them into a list, and then dynamically creating them. And the cool thing about this, don't get mad at me, because you could have done this with Breakout. And it would have made it a lot easier, because you wouldn't actually have to be like b1.create or, b1.initialize a billion times. Because I could make like 50 right now, and that's how easy it is to make 50 with this dynamic memory creation. So I'm sorry for not showing that to you, but you can't blame me for not wanting my second semester to do this. This is definitely like a 3rd or 4th semester concept. Okay, so blah, 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 nothing new. In my timer section, I have a counter, and this is different than my step counter that's being run by the Invader class. This is actually something that's here in main. It's being run by my timer section. I'm just basically calling the move function every 100 ticks of my timer. Okay? So let's see what's going on with this for loop here. I'm saying, hey, take my iterator and put it at the beginning of my list. Whatever thing's at the beginning of my list, I'm going to start there. And I'm going to keep going until I hit the end of my list, and I'm going up one thing in my list at a time. Okay? Then what I'm saying is hey, take a look at, don't move the pointer. Take a look at the thing my pointer is pointing at and move that. That's basically what that means. Okay, that arrow operator. So if I tried to say something like this, like iter dot move, it's going to try to move the pointer and it's going to get mad about that because it doesn't make any sense. You want to move the thing the pointer is pointing to. Okay? And then I collapse these. Don't get weirded out that I've collapsed that, but that's a cool thing Visual Studio does, so we don't have to like scroll down as much. But my input section's still there. It's just condensed. And then we have the same thing going on here for the draw function. I have my iterator. It's set at the beginning of my list. It keeps going to the end of my list, and I'm going up one thing in my list at a time. And I'm saying, hey, take a look at the thing that my pointer is pointing at, and draw it. Okay? So like I said, it would be a lot, this dynamic memory creation makes it super, super easy to make as many of these objects as you want. It just takes a little deeper understanding. So hopefully that's good enough that later on you're going to be able to add to this, because I'm not going to actually do a whole lot more than 5. In the next video we will do some other cool stuff, like hopefully adding some collision with the bullets, because they're not really doing anything right now. Get the Space Invaders to actually shoot at us. And then maybe even put some nicer pictures besides, not that these aren't amazingly beautiful blue-green boxes, but maybe actually having some art from the original game thrown in there would make it look even cooler. Alright, hope this was helpful. Call me if you have any questions. Good luck.